Good morning, everybody. The reading today is taken from 1 Samuel chapter 1. There was a man named Elkanah who lived in Ramah in the region of Zuph in the hill country of Ephraim. He was the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph of Ephraim. Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were the sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of meat to Peninnah and each of her children. And though he loved Hannah, he would give her only one choice portion, because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah and make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year, it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle. Each time, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons? Once after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord. And she made this vow: "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. And as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger. But I am very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I'm a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." "In that case," Eli said, "go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked of him." "Oh, thank you, sir," she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. I trust God is going to add his blessing to the reading and declaration of his word today.
Put your hands together.
You are my hiding place. You are my sanctuary. The most high mountain place. You led me through dark valleys. You are my hiding place. You are my sanctuary. The most high mountain place. You led me through dark valleys. I hold to you with a firm grip. I will not lose. I won't let go till you bless my soul. Step by of my life. Goodness, mercy follow me. Your house shall I abide forever, eternally. Prepare a table before my enemies. Anoint my head with oil.
Hello. For today's service, I thought I'd share with you some Bible verses that relate to the theme living in victory. So the first one I picked was from 1 John chapter 5 verse 4, which says, "For everyone born of God overcomes the world. This is the victory that has overcome the world, even our faith." I think this one is telling us that the key to victory is having faith and having an ongoing trust and reliance on God. And with this, we are able to overcome the pressures presented to us in the world. The next one I picked is Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 4, and it reads, "For the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory." I picked this one because I felt like it was telling us God is always watching and protecting us. He doesn't really leave our side ever. And he will do all he can to make sure that we are able to withstand any tricks that the enemy or our enemies might throw at us. And it just reminds us that we have no reason to fear or worry, because we have someone who is greater than all those things. So the last Bible verses I picked were from Romans chapter 8, verse 31 to 32, and it reads, "What then shall we say in response to those things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also along with him graciously give us all things?" I picked this one because it goes to show, like, with the power of God on our side, nothing is powerful enough or strong enough to defeat us, nowhere near. And the fact that he gave his son for us goes to show how much he loves us all. And as we're his children, he's more than willing to give us all these things as well. And then in verse 37, it says, "No, in all things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." And I searched up the word conquerors, and it was saying synonyms for the word were victor, winners, champions, which I thought ties in really nicely with the theme and is really comforting.
all that I'm living for. So long to my heartache. Goodbye to all my pain. No more unrequited love. 'Cause you're all that I'm living for. So long to my heartache. Goodbye to all my pain. No more unrequited love. 'Cause you're all that I'm living for. 'Cause you're all that I'm living for. 'Cause you're all that I'm living for.
Good morning, good morning. I just wanted to come and quickly encourage you and remind you, or tell you for the first time if you didn't know, that God's ways and God's thoughts are higher than our ways and higher than our thoughts. His ways and thoughts are not our ways and thoughts. And we can take confidence when we read that, when we digest that even when things don't seem like they're working out the way we planned, the way we intended with our timeline, that God is on the case, that God still can turn that situation around. It's a bit like I was traveling to work this week and I go on the same route every single day, but for some reason the traffic was banked up and the sat nav told me to turn right, and I can see that this route is so much longer than my ordinary route, but I turned right. I turned right because I had confidence that the sat nav probably knew better than me, and that sat nav took me along that route, and though it felt long, actually I got to work on time. I realized that if I'd stayed in that traffic, I wouldn't have got to work on time. I was able to have confidence in that sat nav. The sat nav knew better than me. So how much more can we have confidence in the God of the universe, whose thoughts and ways are higher than our thoughts and ways? We don't have to be concerned with the how, with the why, with the when. We can just know that his thoughts and ways are higher than our thoughts and ways. Some of you may know that I was planning to get married in April, but because of restrictions, we've had to push it down the year. And surrounding that obviously is a lot of disappointment, because we planned and we prepared and now we can't have it at the time that we intended. But we are holding on to the fact that God's ways and his thoughts are higher than our ways and thoughts. His plans are so much greater than our plans. We can be confident in that. See, if you find yourself in a situation, circumstance, in a season where things aren't feeling quite that right, where you feel like you've done everything and you're saying, Lord, why is it not working out? Consider that maybe the Lord has got a different way, a different plan, a different timing, because his ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts.
Melodies from heaven rain down on me, rain down on me. Let me hear it. Take me in your arms and hold me close. Rain down on me, rain down on me. Fill me with your presence.
Hello everyone, my name's Kai, for those of you who don't know me, and today I'm going to be talking about living in victory. I'm going to be reading from 1 John chapter 5 verse 4, and it says, "For everyone who has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that has overcome the world, our faith." Now, to me that kind of stands out because it talks about victory through salvation, through going to the Lord and committing your life to the Lord. It shows that through hardships, and as it says, overcomes the world. And especially it's important because of the time we face right now with COVID, that it's important to remember that faith is meant to be unwavering, faith is meant to be absolute, and it's not meant to change. So for me, living in victory is kind of about that faith and understanding that even despite hardships we can overcome.
Okay.
My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems to veil His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds within the veil. My anchor holds within the veil. Christ alone, cornerstone, weak made strong in the Savior's love. Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord of all. When He shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in Him be found, dressed in His righteousness alone, faultless stand before the throne.
Wow, what a year we have lived through. Who would have predicted a year ago that this March we would still be struggling to get out of lockdown, that we would have lost so many thousands of people to a disease that we'd never heard about maybe 24 months ago. We'd never even heard of it. Who would have thought? Nobody would have predicted this. What dreadful times we have been living through. And the only other time I can think of that I have read about which has been so dreadful has got to be back in the day of the book of Judges. I've just been reading through that, guys. I've been reading from the start of the Bible at the start of the year. So I've now got to the book of Samuel. But actually, I had to get through the book of Judges. What a dreadful time. You know, at the end of the book of Judges, there's a refrain that keeps on being said. And it says, in those days, Israel had no king. And the people did whatever they wanted to do. Whatever seemed right in their eyes, they did. And it's in that backdrop of uncertainty, terrible times, awful atrocities that were occurring among the people of God, that we see the people of God just bombarded by the grace of God. When God should have said, enough, time out, we're not having any more of this. My people have rejected me as their king. They're doing their own thing and it's just all topsy-turvy, nothing's going right. I should just wipe them away, maybe like he did in the days of Noah. God continues to send another person to come into Israel, to be a champion for Israel, to lead Israel, and actually to give a picture of the type of person that he was preparing the world for, the person of Jesus Christ. And in these dreadful times, where even some of the priests, oh my gosh, their behavior, their attitudes were so poor, that we have a family that we have read about today. Elkanah, Peninnah, and Hannah. They're living towards the end of Judges. So you know what, we could have put their story in the book of Judges because that's when they're actually alive. Generations have died out. They've got into the promised land now, the children of Israel. They've driven out some of the enemy, but actually they've left a lot of the enemy alive and the enemy have run them ragged. And actually, instead of the people of Israel bringing these no good warriors up to a standard of excellence and holiness, it's the other way around. Often is though, you know, when we are living among people who don't have God as their king, sometimes we can forget that God is our king and we can begin to live like the folks in the world. I wonder if that's been us in these last months, whether we have recognized God is our king. No matter how dreadful the situation might look, God is our king. We don't have to live like those who don't have God as their king. We can actually demonstrate kingdom values. Anyway, back to our text today. So we have this family. And every year they go up to make a sacrifice of thanksgiving. Every year. And you know what happens when you do something every year? It becomes that kind of template in your mind. What's happened over the last 12 months? This week, we were thinking, what's happened over the last 12 months? And we had a 2-minute silence to remember those who we'd lost. There comes to something, you know, when at a certain time of the year, maybe the 31st of December, maybe it's Valentine's Day, you guys, but there's a date that makes us reflect on where we stand. And in this account, we have somebody who every year, it gets pointed out again, I've not made any progress. I'm in exactly the same situation as I was the year before. And that's Hannah. Hannah didn't have any children. And we know, those of us who read the Bible, we know what a stigma it would have been for her to be married and have no children. Not even a daughter. And I say not even because in those days it was the son who was the person who was going to look after mom if anything happened to dad. They were the one who was going to make a living and to care for the family. They could inherit land. They could do lots of things. And, you know, the women Of course, they were cherished, but not in the same way. Hannah had no children. She was barren and she had that stigma. But there was another wife on the scene. If there's any reason to see that polygamy don't work, you know, the Bible tells it as it is. The Bible doesn't really make much commentary on it, but where you see it, it hardly ever works properly, because you have this family, pretty dysfunctional really. Peninnah, who's able to have children, and so when they go to make their sacrifice, a portion of the sacrifice is given back to the family and given to her and for each of her children. And I can just imagine how she's gloating right there, because she looks over to Hannah, who actually only has one choice portion, where she may have 3 or 4 because she's got those children. And she thinks, And when Elkanah's back is turned, she's giving it some. She's provoking. Sisters, you know what I mean? There are some other sisters who are so provoking. They know which buttons to press. And she's pressing Hannah's buttons. Look at my choice cuts. Oh, of course. Oh, I'm so sorry, Hannah, because you've only got one, haven't you? Oh, dear. And every year, Hannah goes through this ritual of accepting this one choice portion, but knowing in her heart there is something more that she desires. There's something more that she wants. There's something more that she thinks she should have. And then there's Peninnah stirring it. And I guess Peninnah was probably stirring it because she could see the love and the tenderness that Elkanah had for Hannah. You see, you know what? The man couldn't do it for both. He probably did love Peninnah. I'm not saying he didn't, but he loved Hannah. That's the difference. He really loved Hannah. His eyes lit up for her. Don't matter that she didn't have any children. And Peninnah probably thought, only thing that I've got in this is my children, so let me just put that one in her place. At that milestone of going to make that sacrifice, Hannah is reminded again, I've made no progress. Now, I don't know about you, but let me just be honest here. A year and a bit ago, I had some plans, man. I really had some plans. I was going to make progress in the things of God. I was going to see things happen, especially among our young people. Boy, did I have plans. Did I have hope? Did I have dreams? 12 months later, I'm looking and thinking, what's happened? What's happened to my hopes and my dreams and the things that I thought I was going to accomplish? And things have happened, and that what I dreamt of hasn't necessarily happened. So although it's not the same, I can sense that for some of us, we're barren this year. We're thinking the thing that I wanted to bring to birth hasn't come. I've got nothing to show for the time that I spent. I've just been treading water. It's the same. If you'd seen me this time last year, I'm in exactly the same position. I had dreamt of doing a new job maybe, or I dreamt of having that promotion, or I thought by now I would have got that home, or been in that relationship, or to have a child, or whatever it might be, to birth that ministry, to progress in my ministry, but it hasn't happened. And there's a bit of a provocation. Yeah, it might not be from a person, because you know your fight is not against flesh and blood. But the enemy is provoking. You know better on than you were last year. You got nothing to show for it. You know what? Just a little COVID and you've all fallen to pieces. Honestly, this is where Hannah was. She felt embarrassed. She felt low. She felt depressed. Her mental health. And no matter that, Elkanah said, I love you so much. Aren't I better for you than 10 sons? She probably said nothing, but deep in her heart she was saying, no, not really, because I know what I want. Let me give you a few things from Hannah's life then that have helped me over these last few months, and especially over these last few months, because some of you know I haven't even been that well. I had the dreaded COVID at Christmas time, and I don't think I've been Well, since then, to be fair, thank God for life. Thank God for breath. But you know what? It's been a hard time. It's been a hard time for me and for my family. It's not been easy trying to plan things and at every corner being thwarted. But let me give you some things from Hannah's life that I've really enjoyed looking at and understanding. First of all, Hannah, she went directly to the Lord. I love that about Hannah. She went directly to the Lord. She didn't go through Elkanah. She didn't go through the priest. She decided to take her burden straight to the Lord. And she persisted, because we know that Hannah each year would have more than likely gone to the Lord, and she persisted. She could have given up, but she said, no, I'm going to persist. I'm going to continue until I get a breakthrough, until the Lord answers me clearly from heaven. I am going to continue to cry out at the altar. Trust me, that's what we've got to do. I thank God that right about now in our church, that's what we're doing. We're going to the altar and we're holding on to God and we're saying, Lord, bless me, or I die. It's got to be all about you, God. It's got to be about your agenda. It's got to be about your power, because truthfully, Hannah had no power to bring forth a child. We know, big people, we know what you do to get children. We're not naive, but no matter what Hannah and Elkanah might have done, they could not make her conceive and bring forth a child. That's God's domain. So we got to recognize when something's our domain and when something's God's. And when it's his domain, we got to persist in prayer. We got to go to that altar like Hannah did. The word tells us that she went to the altar and she poured out. She poured out to the Lord. This is what I love about Hannah. She even says it. She says it to Eli. You know what? I've been praying out of great anguish and sorrow. You know what? The Lord don't mind if you go to him in anguish and sorrow. He's more than equipped to deal with our anguish and our sorrow. I thank God that he calls us to the altar when we are in anguish and in sorrow. If there's ever a time that we should be in anguish and in sorrow, it is now. It is now, when we look back and we think, what have we done for the last 12 months? Who have we birthed into the kingdom in the last 12 months? Oh God, we need children. We want to have children birthed in our churches, in our society, in our community, in our world for such a time as this, because we know time is absolutely of the essence. Time is short. So Hannah goes directly to the Lord. People of God, let's not neglect prayer. Let's not neglect it. Let us go directly to the Lord at all times. Pray without ceasing, the word tells us. Don't give up. Don't stop. Take every opportunity you have to pray. Get into your prayer closet so it's you and God. Go down on your hands and your knees, your face if you need to, but call out to God. And when you get the call at church to gather for prayer, take up the opportunity. Take up the opportunity to go before the Lord and persist in prayer. So that's the first thing that I really like about Hannah. The other thing that I like, and we didn't read it actually, because it's actually later on in chapter 2. And I'll read a bit of it now, because Hannah actually, she remembers the goodness of God. Even in her situation, even though her situation is not great, she remembers who her God is. In chapter 2, it says, Hannah prayed, my heart rejoices in the Lord. The Lord has made me strong. Now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you rescued me. No one is holy like the Lord. There is no one beside you. There is no rock like our God. And she's recalling, yes, that God actually answers her own prayer, but God has been that rock, that solid rock throughout the time of the judges. God has been that rock. She recalls it. She remembers it. I guarantee you that when she was at that altar in prayer, when she was being persistent, she was recalling, God, you're the rock. You're the Holy One. Is there anything that's impossible for my God to do? Do you know, people? in this dreadful time, we need to remind ourselves who our God is, that God is a rock. There is nothing impossible for him. He can even cause us in the midst of our barrenness to bring forth children. And when I'm talking about children, yes, I'm talking about those ministries that we wanted to birth. We're talking about the souls that we wanted to see saved. This year's been awful. So many of our people we have lost to a disease or to other things, not just to COVID. We're never going to see their face again on this earth. And it is imperative that we recognize that now. Each year we recognize that some of the people that we see around us, some of the people in my family, my cousins, my own flesh and blood, they don't know the Lord. I want them birthed into the kingdom of God. I have to be persistent at the altar, but I have to remember who I'm going to, that my God is the rock. Now, when Hannah says there in chapter 2, now I have an answer for my enemies. I rejoice because you rescued me. That's the thing I want to also tell you about Hannah. Hannah recognized somehow that Peninnah was an enemy. Now, I don't want to make out Peninnah was all wicked and all bad, because we have to recognize the spiritual element of Peninnah. Peninnah represents, I suppose, the Satan in that respect, because that's what he does. He makes us feel small. He causes us to see, our inadequacies, but not because he wants us to go to God, but he wants us to actually stand thinking, well, I can't do nothing. There's nothing I can do, so I might as well give up. I might as well turn back. He makes you think, you've been going at this thing for so long and nothing's happened. Nothing's ever going to happen. That's what Peninnah was doing with Hannah. It don't make no sense, Hannah. How many years have you been going at this thing? You've still not had even a daughter, so forget it. That's the enemy. If you're hearing that voice, you're not good enough. You're never going to get that promotion. You're never going to get into that job. You're never going to get your act together. You're never going to get that man, that girl. You're never going to be married. You're never going to have children. Your children are going to be no good. If you're hearing that voice, and it might be coming out of a face that you recognize, try and look beyond and see the real enemy. Because the God that we serve wants to give you an answer for that enemy. And the answer is your testimony. When you've gone through that test, you come forth as gold, saying, yeah, you thought you had me beat, but look at what my God has done. Look at what my God has done. I am so amazed that Hannah continued in prayer. I'm so wonderfully amazed that she knew who her God actually was. Even in the midst of her pain, she recognized who God was, the one who had stood as a solid rock throughout the time of the judges. Read Judges for yourself, man. You will see how awful it was. But God stood as a solid rock for the people of Israel and for Hannah. She never forgot. And then she gets her breakthrough. And what does she do? Well, she remembers something that she did. Because the word of God says that she made a vow. It's interesting. She made a vow. And the vow that she made was that, Lord, if you answer my prayer and you give me a son, I'm going to give him back to you. And he's going to serve you for his whole life. You know what? Sometimes we're quick to make a vow, aren't we? We're quick to say something. Lord, if you get me out of this situation, I'm going to serve you. Lord, if only you turn this around, it's all for your glory and for your honor. Only for us to get the thing and we just totally forget. Hannah did something here, which I want to just point out as the last thing before I finish today. Hannah made a vow, but she was very specific in what she wanted. It wasn't a Lord bless me today kind of prayer. She specifically asked God for a son. And she said, should you give me that son that I've been calling out to you to give me, I am going to give him back to you. This is all that God ever wants from us. That the things that he gives us, we present back to him. If he gives us a job that we've been begging him for, that we present it back to him and say, Lord, this is your job now. How do you want to use it? Lord, this is your home. How do you want to use it? Lord, this is the relationship that you've given me. How do you want to use it? Lord, you brought me into this ministry. How do you want to use it? It's yours, Lord. You use it as you desire. You shape it. You turn it around. You use it. I tell you, if we were persistent, if we recognized who our God is, that he's a rock, and that his heart is to give us an answer to the enemy voice that we hear. If we could understand that when we come and we say, yes, Lord, we want you to do this. We need you to do this. And we tell the Lord, it's all yours anyway. He will actually use what we give. Now back to the history. So we're really at the end of Judges, to be fair, even though it's the first book of Samuel. In God's perfect timing, perfect for the time that it was, Hannah gives birth to a son. She calls him Samuel. God hears. And true to her vow, she gives him back to the Lord and says, Lord, he's yours. Use him as you will. And did the Lord use that man? From a child, God used Samuel. He grew up knowing all things about the Lord. He loved God, and he foreshadowed our Lord Jesus. He had some tasks to do. He anointed one man as king, the people's king, who the people would have wanted. And that was a template. This is what you say you want, but look what you get when you have your own way. And he also anointed the man after God's own heart, King David, and said, this is what kingship looks like when there is a man after God's own heart. And so began the dynasty of David, which goes on and on and on all the way through the line of Judah until we have the real Lion of Judah, Jesus. This was Samuel strategically placed. Why? Because there was a woman who could not any longer put up with the provocation of the enemy voice. And she said, Lord, I need you to step in and do what I can't do. And Lord, whatever you do for me, I'm going to give it back to you for you to use as you will. Brothers and sisters, I hope you're encouraged, because this is what I've had to be encouraging myself with over these last 12 months. I pray that you will be encouraged to do what Hannah did. Pray without ceasing. Pray expectantly. Pray knowing who your God is. Pray because God is going to give you an answer to silence the enemy. And pray because God is looking for you to give the things that he's already given to you back to him, so he can anoint and empower, and actually to give a template of what kingdom life and values really ought to look like. God bless you, brethren.